Let me start with India, because we've talked a lot about China and the Chinese economy. It's slowing down some of the things. India is a very different story, it looks like. I mean, in fact, what I read was they're estimating the GDP growth may be as high as 7.5%, higher than China's. It's the seventh largest economy in the world. So how are things looking to you in India?
I think things are looking much better in India than what they were, say, 18 months ago, because I remember 18 months ago it was one of the fragile 5 economies. From there on, actually, the macroeconomic indicators have improved substantially. Current account deficit is better, fiscal deficit is under control, inflation has come a lot under control, and again, while the monsoons have been a little tricky, the government has done a lot about managing food supplies and so on. So inflation is under control, interest rates are coming down. You see, increase in production of cars, commercial vehicles, mining activity, and so on. So I think there's a huge uptick. The real movement in the economy is now likely to come because of the government spendings going up as well. So there's a thrust on highways, there's a likely thrust on railways, defense, and so on.
In terms of movement in the economy, are you seeing movement in terms of income inequality? Because the divide in India is massive. And for you, in a private bank perspective, clearly you are dealing with the wealthiest.
So while the divide exists in a country like India, I think the biggest thing that's happening today is a whole lot of efforts around financial inclusion and around skilling, people, so as to make them more eligible or capable of generating livelihoods. So what the government has done is what we call the JAM Trinity, which is the Jan Dhan, the Aadhaar, and the mobile. That is, we have opened, as the banking industry, 180 million bank accounts in the last 12 months for the unbanked people.
80 million bank accounts.
Yes.
That's 12 months.
And then we back it up.
That's crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, absolutely, it is. And then we back it up with the unique identity that the government is giving to every individual in India. And then we combine that with direct benefit transfers of subsidies. And that kind of brings in so many of these million people in the economic activity.
So, I didn't know this. This unique identity, is it a card?
It's actually just a number.
It's a number.
It's a number.
But how many people is that when you give them?
So it's been given to almost the entire population now. But since now even the unbanked people have this unique identity, it's possible for banks to open a bank account for them.
But this looks like a large opportunity for Western companies, investment, and things like that. As I say, it appears to be growing faster than China. It's the 7th largest economy in the world. At the same time, the World Bank ranks India as 142nd, I believe, out of 189 countries. China's 90, so you're 50 full places behind. What accounts for that, and what can be done for it?
So as you're saying, I think the biggest potential is about investing and the requirement to invest, the requirement to create infrastructure, the smart cities, the Make in India, and so on and so forth. I think government really realizes that we are right down there as far as the ease of doing business is concerned. So two things. One is, at the central level itself, a lot of activity is going on in terms of moving a lot of decisions online, transparent, and so on and so forth. That's one. The second is the central government has started now actually this competition of ranking different states about the ease of doing business. So there are more than 100, or actually 190 points on which these states are ranked, and the states are now competing with each other to get better in ease of doing business. And I think that should make a whole lot of difference.
I want to bring in a Twitter question, because you mentioned earlier inclusion, from Zari Gill. How can your bank increase access of rural women to banking?
So we've been doing that actually in a big way. The way we do this, especially for rural women, is through the self-help groups. So there are in India, in rural India, there are groups of 10, 20 women who come together, who pool their savings, who then think of livelihood opportunities and take micro loans from the banks. And we have, even as a private sector bank, we have kind of assisted more than 1.3 million women just through this self-help group initiative, which helps them actually pool their savings and increase their livelihoods by taking microloans.
Well, to those women and women around the world, what an inspirational story you are. Time magazine last year named you one of the 100 most influential people in the world. But what's your story within the bank? You joined at the age of 22. What was your job then?
I joined as a management trainee, and I was doing project appraisals, looking at projects that are set up in India because we were a financial institution giving loans to set up those projects. But from then on, you know, the ICICI actually diversified substantially. We moved into retail consumer banking. So I had the opportunity of setting up the retail consumer banking for the bank. And then we globalized. So I was setting up the international operations for the bank. And, you know, I also looked at the control and the CFO functions. And that's how I moved up.
Can I just ask, does it surprise you then, when you look at global banks or banks here in the United States, that there is not a single one having a woman as a CEO? Nor has there ever been.
It really does. Actually, when I sit on, you know, many of these international forums around banking, there's hardly any woman there, and I'm just maybe one or at the most two out of the 40, 50 global bankers that sit there. So I think India is actually doing much better in this respect than the rest of the world.